The fact he turns about as quick as an ocean liner always makes me concerned about centre-backs. But, you know, from the point of view of what I saw at Leicester, it's not replicating itself at Man United. What you saw playing for England isn't replicating itself at Man United. Welcome to this week's edition of One-2-One with Simon Jordan. Don't forget to keep liking and subscribing, and most importantly, leaving your questions in the comment section below. Let's get into this week's show. Difficult to put a valuation on Harry Maguire, you know, because I've never been a great admirer of his in the first place, so you're sort of pitching a woo to someone that doesn't have that much of a regard for the player. Clearly he's a decent footballer, clearly he's a decent centre-back, otherwise he wouldn't be at Manchester United. The fact he turns about as quick as an ocean liner always makes me concerned about centre-backs. But, you know, from the point of view of what I saw at Leicester, it's not replicating itself at Man United. What you saw playing for England isn't replicating itself at Man United. He's not the player that people possibly think he is. So, going to the valuation perspective, it's beauty's in the eye of the beholder. If I were buying Harry Maguire, I would never have paid £80 million for him. I wouldn't have wanted to pay that much. But then you've got to look into the face of the coaches that are signing him, because they're the ones that wanted him. It was Mourinho, allegedly, that fell out with Ed Woodward because he didn't get that final piece of the jigsaw that he wanted, and that final piece was Harry Maguire. So for me, it's difficult to place a value on it, but I don't think he's an £80 million footballer to draw your conclusion from there. I've always been reticent about the Ronaldo acquisition, not because I don't think arguably he's the world's greatest player, and not because I don't think that he can do a job for Man United, but the job that Man United need to do is to rebuild themselves as an irresistible force, an irresistible team, rather than having individual components like Ronaldo that are a bit like the cherry on top of a cake that hasn't really been made. So I think Ronaldo will feature predominantly because they're going to go into the Champions League and he scores goals, but they might get the message across through a proper grown-up coach that he can't play in every single game. And we've seen recently Ronaldo on the bench at Burnley. Now, whether that's because he rested him, whether it's because he's got a knock, or whether it's because it was the nature of the opposition in the game, or he wants to play him in a different game and wants him to be fresher for that game. I've always felt, and there was other people more educated in football tactics than me, like people like Graham Souness, that felt that Ronaldo going into a side that needed to work harder, needed to play with more energy, and needed to press more, was going to be a contradiction in terms. So I think Ronaldo will, of course, deliver goals, will, of course, be, to my mind, the cameo part of the United rebuild. So with all that in mind, I think you'll see a mixed bag from him. But the Champions League is where I think you'll probably see Ronaldo excel. I think it's a difficult one to forecast. I would have to say somewhere along the line, you know, if you play it enough times, it's like if you throw enough something against the wall, it ends up sticking. If Man City play in this tournament enough times under the same manager with the brief that he was brought in to win the Champions League, you have to suggest that Man City are likely to be the winners because they've got, no doubt, the best team in domestic football right now. But other people might argue about their own individual leagues, but I think realistically, when it comes down to it, when you turn the gas up, as Man City did against PSG, they are the side to beat. So I think eventually you are going to, if you do enough things enough times, you'll get the right outcome. So I think probably, if I'm being sensible when I was placing a bet, then I'd say Man City. You can never discount Liverpool. And I've got a strange feeling, as strange as it will be to people listening to this, that Man United might just do a little bit more than people anticipate. But from the winning point of view, I know I'm going all with English teams, but I do think we've got the best sides at this moment in time. So I think it's most likely to be this is Man City's season. I don't think it's a straight shootout between Everton and Newcastle. I think Everton and Newcastle will both survive. I think Everton's performance in the game midweek this week, or the early part of the week against Newcastle, wasn't good enough, and I think Frank Lampard has perhaps bitten off a little bit more than he realised he had to chew. But that notwithstanding, I think there's enough in the fibre of Everton to find their way through it, not based upon their performance midweek against Newcastle. Newcastle spent £100 million on players, for the love of God. Let's not start waxing lyrical about the miracle that Eddie Howe's going to do, because they should be getting out of trouble. I just think it's going to be other sides. Burnley, Watford and Norwich are, my view, of the teams that are going to go down, and Everton and Newcastle will not be an either-or. So that's it for this week's edition of One-to-One with Simon Jordan. Don't forget to let me know your views on Premier League relegation battles, Champions League potentials, and also, importantly, to like and subscribe, and of course, leaving your questions in the comment section below. Look forward to seeing you next week.